Hello everyone, this is Erica of ericacrooks.com, and you can check out my puppet stuff on official ericacrooks.com. And speaking of which, I'm recording here at the current table I'm working with in terms of my so-called puppet workshop. And as you can plainly see, it's totally disorganized, and this is not the greatest puppet building tutorial in the whole wide world. Before you click out of this video, I would strongly suggest the BJ Geyer tutorials that are on Stan Winston. Those are pretty cool. And there's a couple other ones that are pretty good. But hey, aren't we all learning from each other, you know? But anyway, just doing this for fun, I suppose. For those who enjoy watching the Erica Crooks show, Dr. Liebrich and all that. So I've been pretty much doing this stuff since 1999, pretty much. So just kind of showing off just techniques that I use, and why my stuff is cheap. Anyway, I like experimenting pretty much. That would explain why, because it's kind of like when I learn, it's like I'm not like, I guess it's kind of like school, you know, where it's kind of like, you know, you learn to do it this way and that way. I would do that, but I would experiment in between, you know, and I guess that just explains me in life, you know. It's kind of like, you know, I like to see the other possibilities, or, you know, I'd love, you know, it's not like I love making mistakes, but kind of exploring in between the steps and see, you know, ways about doing things. So I'll learn a little bit from here, learn a little bit from experimenting. You know, if it's any use to you or not, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm just going to show off stuff I got around here, like severed hand that I pretty much carved out of just scissors, pretty much. You know, my experiment of making a decent puppet hand. You know, when you do stuff, you're going to make mistakes, so don't beat yourself up and be a perfectionist. You know, because sometimes your mistakes can benefit to exploring new ways about doing things. So, before I used like acrylic paints and stuff like that, and I would just like soak it big time and just have it out on my kitchen and just drying and stuff like that. And I mean, this is still holding up pretty good. I think I made this around 2015 or so, because most of the time you know, this would crack and it would disintegrate the foam like super easily. I've heard of techniques like, you know, mixing the acrylic with liquid latex and stuff, but, you know, I tend to work within budget, because I think the thing with, like, puppets in video is you can use stuff like cardboard for whatever and stuff like that, because, you know, if you really think about, like, puppets and stuff like that, I'm saying the same thing over and over, stuff like that, you know. Anyway, gotta laugh at yourself. It's a craft, you know, so, and you use, like, recycled things, sometimes old t-shirts, make sure they're clean, like, old, worn-out socks have holes in them, make sure they're clean, you know, you do anything. Like, when I started, before I started with, like, foam and stuff, I started just with paper and scissors and tape and things like that. Some would say that's kind of a lousy puppet, but you can kind of, like, explore, like, different ways of going about patterns and stuff like that. And I don't know, I just tend to get super bored easily, and I kind of lose my, like, attention things. So sometimes I just build as I go. But if I wanted to build something, like, really, really nice and, like, something really specific, I would draw, like, the sketch of the character and figure out with certain things. But, you know, depending on your budget, you know, because it's kind of like, you will make mistakes, and, you know, if you're, like, working towards perfection, You know, it's a lot better with animation than it is with puppets, because, you know, and there's all technical problems depending on what you're trying to do, you know. So it's kind of like with filmmaking, animation, puppet building, you know, prepare for sacrifices and stuff like that, you know. Unless, of course, you like to do things, you know, over and over. It really depends on the person. I tend to do things kind of spontaneous. One of my all-time favorite materials I've worked with was Crayola, I guess like the self-hardening clay stuff. I don't know if I got, Model Magic, yeah, this stuff. I've been using this stuff for like years, even before I started doing the filming stuff. The downside to it is, yeah, it totally breaks easily, but, you know, I consider my puppets a lot of times like, you know, crash test dummies and stuff, because they always like fall apart and stuff, and I'll just take the handy dandy glue gun, and I don't know why I haven't glued it in well. Something, right? So, you know, I would make things with eyes and stuff. You know, the downside of it is, you know, as video technology gets better, you're gonna see cracks in it, and that's like, you know, it's not like, you know, latex molding or anything. It's like super easy, super quick. It's like Play-Doh. It's like clay, you know, and then you just let it harden, and then I just glue it and stuff like that. Sometimes it falls apart. Like, I did a parody of the Happy Time Murders, because it went like downhill, like, well, pretty much is, right? I haven't seen it yet, but, you know, I'm satirist, so sometimes I poke fun at stuff I care about, you know, just, you know, looking forward to the brand new Brian Henson movie, and then we get this. So I did a parody, and this was a character's nose that had glued, and within the middle of the filming, the nose like pops off, and, you know, that's kind of like what I'm like pointing out, that I keep my mistakes in my films a lot. So sometimes there's like blooper reels, but a lot of times the bloopers are within the show. There probably some kind of humor in that, and, you know, again, that's kind of how I work, you know, like, I would sometimes make mistakes and make them worse. And this is a tongue, kind of like, sort of like inspired by like Miley Cyrus, when she was like going around going, but except this is like more recent, you know, the kiss tongue and stuff. Like, for example, you know, if I were to take this head of one of the stock characters and just like, it's kind of hard because it's sort of a drawn mouth. I don't know, like that. You know, it's kind of hard for the character to close the mouth, so, you know, maybe something like this, just for like, you know, like kind of a stop frame kind of thing, because, you know, it's kind of like with the animation, you know. I mean, there's better ways about going about things like posing hands. It would have like the wires inside the fingers, so, you know, I'm well aware of it, but I do things like very cheap and fast, and which can be kind of good when it comes to like topical stuff, but what was topical could be totally outdated. And you know, sometimes like the detailed stuff, you know, is great. Like, for example, I'm getting a little bit better with the suit making and stuff like that. And, yeah, sometimes, like, there's characters are just, like, stock characters, and then they evolve from time. Like, this was originally Arnold's psychopathic, sort of not really girlfriend character, who was based on some girl that broke my heart in high school. And, this was the rebuild of the character from the 2016 episodes. And this ended up being one of the executive characters, because I just thought the design was pretty cool, you know. And there's sometimes a little bit of a difference between, you know, characters, like the styles of characters I build, because I would just build it out of that. But when I'm drawing and designing characters, there's a little more thought that goes into it. But, you know, being a huge Muppet fan, you know, sometimes, like, you know, I'm, like, somewhat inspired by the Michael Frith kind of designs, you know, like the humanoid characters on the Muppet Show, where you can't tell if it's like, you know, their nose or their head or their lip, and I thought that kind of surreal kind of design was pretty nifty. Almost like a Dr. Seuss kind of thing. But yeah, like, sometimes a lot of the big thing that I do is I would have, like, character heads, like, you know, I used to not have, like, neck sleeves, but now I do. But if you notice, even with my early videos, like about 10 years ago or something, you would see, like, my hand, and you would see my wrist, and the wristwatch and all that. And I did that, like, on purpose because I had characters, you know, have their heads blow up and stuff, so I kind of thought on that level. But, you know, again, you know, there's better technical ways about going things. And, you know, I think, you know, the big difference between what I do and what other people, you know, they do better than me is that they take their time and they think things out before they do it. I don't. I just, like, go ahead and do it. I mean, it's sort of a good kind of spontaneous thing to do. Like, if you're doing something super last minute and super, like, topical, but on the long run, you know, I tend to just throw things in here, because you never know. Again, it's like a craft art, you know. I don't know why that's there. I don't know. Maybe I'd change the label. Like, anything could be technically a prop. You know, any last minute sort of thing. And, you know, there's people use better stuff, like, you know, Velcro and stuff like that. I just tend to glue it, and it, like, rips out. So I haven't, like, I kind of switch more to, like felt kind of fabric, because if you tear off a certain feature, it doesn't do too much damage, except it'll get all fuzzy. Opposed to, like, something, like, with foam and stuff like that. Like this one, currently Trump, right now, because I was kind of thinking of sort of a, you know, kind of a Humpty Dumpty kind of look. You know, just you know, character that doesn't seem to have a neck. Almost like sort of egg-like shape, but it's a recycled puppet, basically. It's glued down. Because originally, the head was originally sort of it was a stock character, and then it ended up being, like, spoofing some guy who's claiming to spot, like, Bigfoot, and this was a while back, I think 2014 or so. And I was going to do this big sketch, and then, again, you know, it's one of my flaws, right? Where when I think something takes too long, I totally, like, lose interest in it, and I do a shorter version, try to make that shorter version funnier. So it ended up being, I think, like, Bigfoot, you know, slamming the characters. So the character took several different forms, and I was sort of thinking of an idea of, like, you know, just a frowning Trump puppet, because, you know, Trump doesn't look like a nice guy, you know. You know, even if you didn't know what he was doing in the news, you can kind of get that negative vibration from the guy. And so, you know, another thing is, instead of building a whole new puppet and also saving money, they would be like stock puppets. And, you know, when Trump is no longer popular or whatever, you know, this would be, you know, transformed to another character. So, but, you know, I would add little features into it, like, you know, Trump's teeth. He kind of has, like, bunny rabbit teeth, pretty much. If you see the pictures, kind of like that. And, you know, the thing I noticed about his eyebrows, so I would exaggerate that, and it actually kind of makes it funny, because I don't think people really think that much about the eyebrows, you know. And this is just, like, yellow feathers and stuff like that. Big Bird, however, uses turkey feathers, and they dye it. You know, that's one of the things I've heard. And then, you know, I had a stock foam dollar. Don't worry, it's not meant to be counterfeit. Okay, not that funny, but... And before, like, when I did stuff with the rods and stuff, you know, basically flower, like, rod that you would find in a wedding section at, like, Joann Fabrics or AC Moore, which surprisingly is actually cheaper than, like, on the internet because of the shipping and all that. Like, you can find, like felt and stuff, well, the price is like 30 something cents, and it blows my mind. So of course I'm gonna buy like stocks and stuff when I can. Before I would just wrap around the wrist, like if you see like the early episodes and stuff, I would have it wrap around the wrist, and then I just make a little hole in there, and then just take it out or put it back in and stuff. And it's a little bit better with film. The big thing that I do more now is like chroma key, but sometimes I just like, I'll screw it, because again, filmmaking, you're taking a lot of skills and you're putting it together, like everything I do is pretty much, I pretty much do everything, like the backgrounds and sound effects, and sometimes I pre-record the voices and have the puppets mime to it. Sometimes it's just totally sloppy. I know I should like just practice with it. Sometimes I just don't have that like patience in my mind. I just want to go ahead and do it. I have the idea, forget the script. I just go ahead and I just do it for better or worse. And if it doesn't seem to be working out, edit it short or just do something animation spontaneous, or just like film something different, Again, I work on a very kind of spontaneous level, for better or worse. Sometimes, it has its pros and cons. Same with the animation, like I can have like a good idea. Maybe it's better with like comics and stuff like that, because I can like totally work on that, or even like something written, like kind of a written story. And when I get bored of it, I just like chop it down until I just have the main idea, and maybe I don't like the main idea of the sketch, and I just go ahead and do it. Like, one of the things too that I tend to do, like mentioning like stock puppets and stuff, is like just make stock everything. Like, I have a fake puppet gun I made, for more violent characters. Most likely, that Happy Time Murders parody and stuff like that. And I tend to have a lot of psychopathic characters just to kind of make that political point that we don't need to have those kind of negative attitudes in society. And if we got rid of that, everyone lived in peace, we probably wouldn't have the Law and Order BS that we have today. And yeah, that's probably like a controversial thing, but I'm an anarchist and spiritual, New Age, and all that stuff. That maybe only I find intellectual. Anyway, this is what I was mentioning about the eyes. Like, if I was going to glue this down, make sure there's no cracks, that's like the folly right there. I don't know, maybe it looks like a mouth. And eyes, and it's like turning to a snowball, Trump with a snowball, like, ideas can come out from that, sometimes I have the idea, or sometimes I have the puppet, and I'm thinking, just kind of spontaneously come up with, like, ideas, as I go, so it's not like step 1, step 2, step 3, because I already know those skills somewhat, and sometimes it comes sloppy, sometimes it's pretty cool. Sometimes my mom gives me stuff, like her old glasses, maybe that'll work for a character or scene. It's always good to have that kind of stuff, and again, I could be doing things that are a little bit better. Like, the big thing too is, like, stuff I'm learning is, like with puppet arms and stuff like that, you have, like this, like, shoelace, inside the arms. So, and you put it through, like some kind of big button holes on the joints. So, when you're changing, like, costumes on the characters. But I don't really have, like, the funds right now to do that. But, I don't know, I had thoughts of, like, maybe doing a big puppet movie and, I don't know, funding on it, funding it on, I don't know, like, Kickstarter or whatever, Patreon, because a lot of people do it, but, I'm always the moral person. Is that right to do for the audience? I don't know, but then again, they volunteer, I don't know, and that comes back. Anyway, back to puppets. So I have, like, little things that are made, a little goatee for maybe the entrepreneur type characters, capitals, that type. Little devil horns, never want to use that. Had an idea of black demon characters, but anyway, like I was mentioning, like, about the Crayola model magic. Sometimes I just make different shape eyes and stuff, But, you know, again, a cleaner look would be like, you know, like ping pong balls and stuff. You cut one in half, and that's pretty much the origins of Kermit, pretty much. You know, little things are always good. Sometimes, you know, there's materials that are better than others. You know, more realistic, sort of semi-realistic. Feathers is really wonderful. That's like Muppet material right there. You know, and it's stuff you wouldn't really necessarily think of. Like, this is basically cushion polyurethane foam and stuff like that. That's like pretty much like Muppet skeleton stuff. Pretty neat. And sometimes like doll hair, wigs. When I started out, like I would get like hair extensions and stuff. I made an Ozzy Osbourne puppet and a Mick Jagger puppet. They didn't appear on the film show, but the Mick Jagger body did. There was like a parody Rolling Stones type shirt that would have like the hand characters wear. But, you know, the problem with that is, like, if you're just gluing it down with the glue gun, the hair goes all over the place, and you don't have, like, a seam to glue it down and stuff. I use this for a couple of the Trump parody shorts and stuff, which is kind of funny because you could have, like, the big Trump character just, like, waving his head around, and this would grow because there's a hole in the head. That was unintentional, but, again, sometimes those, like, things are kind of funny. You know, as long as it's clean and as long as, you know, you can use pretty much anything. And depending on, it's just putting it in the right order like a puzzle and experimenting. It's like puppet making is kind of like a, sort of a form of sculpture kind of thing. So, anyway, yeah, like, the pupil fell out. One of the things I was, like, kind of playing with is, you know those googly eyes and stuff you would see all the time? I've always detested those, but one of the things I noticed is when you cut one open, you could just grab that little pupil and use it, and it works pretty well. And again, a lot of times I get lazy, and I don't even color in the mouth, I don't even think of it. As long as the joke gets in, you know? Same with the animations, it doesn't have to be all Disney. Like, I have stock felt. Totally disorganized. Yeah, like I was mentioning, like, these right here. So, you know, how do I go about, like, building a puppet? I usually, weirdly enough, I start with, like, a mouth plate, pretty much. Let's see. Sometimes I just randomly have them made out. Blank foam is pretty cool. Like, you know, the flat kind of foam. You can use that with anything. Like, I remember watching the BJ Geyer tutorials. You can do that with eyelids and stuff, and I'm like, oh, really? I've been using it for pretty much everything, you know? That and felt. I mean, there's no right or wrong way of building a puppet. That's the thing. So, I have a piece of paper right here, so I'll use that as an example. Like, I used to use hard foam. I should use that again. And I don't know where the scissors are. I think there's one I can use for now. And I know you got things to do. Anyway. I just use these small thread and needle kind of ones for now. So, you know, the thing I would do, whatever material this is, it usually needs to be strong. Again, you know, sometimes use cardboard, like that. Sometimes, like this one, I don't even think has a mouth plate, you know, because it's pretty much hard foam. But anyway, I'll use this as an example. So, pretty much, you know, you want to make sure that it's as, you know, big as your hand. I don't know if this one's bigger. Pretty much the same size. So, yeah. So, because, you know, you're going to operate the mouth with your hand, pretty much. So, you know, it's kind of like your, you know, typical origami, right? You know, you fold it in half. Well, this is how I do it. There's better ways to go about doing it. Like, some would just, like, cut the two pieces first and have, like, a middle thing. And I done that, too. I think I have a puppet that I did that. You know, it's a better way of going about it. The finger holes and stuff, but the puppets are so small that I just like totally dismiss it. So, you know, make sure where my hand is. It's very small, so sometimes I just like, you know, come to that realization. If it's big, I don't care necessarily. This is like a fast way of doing it, which isn't the best. So, you know, just kind of mapping out my hand pretty much. Sometimes, you know, my thumb, like I have this like goblin character that I did. It was part of the retrospective thing, the first retrospective. I just uploaded that. No, wait. No, I had that for a while, and I just put the poster in. And I kind of made a jaw, which is pretty cool. So, you know, if the shape looks cool, I keep it, you know. I like doing stuff like that. So basically, you know, just start cutting away. I always start with the mouth, you know, if I'm just spontaneously building. And, you know, either way, fold or whatever. Because, so pretty much, you know, there's the mouth plate right here. And sometimes I would just, like, draw, like, within the mouth. Which, you know, I think it was, like, inspired by, like, how Jim Henson built the first Kermit. The mouth, I believe, is painted. Maybe it's some kind of leather or something. But, you know, like, if you look at the mouths of the Salmon Friends, like, Muppets and stuff, they weren't as, like, carefully done, like, you know, with the throat muscles and the tongue and stuff like that, as it is today. Like, it was pretty much painted, so I was, like, totally inspired by that. And, you know, there's a little more detail in Kermit's mouth than it is, you know, with the more modern one. Like, you know, there would be the throat muscles. I noticed that with Gonzo, there was a lot more, like, throat muscles, and I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. So sometimes I'm a little more realistic, semi-realistic. Like, I would draw, like, a circle or something like that. Like, I should do a drawing tutorial, because drawing construction stuff. Preston Blair has a really cool cartoon book that's, like, totally, like, old school, and I learned that John Cristofalusi of Ren and Stimpy was using that, but who wants to mention that guy? What he did, right? I know, still, Ren and Stimpy has a special place in my heart. So, I'm just mapping it out. I'm sorry that you can't see it. Yeah, secret messages you're not supposed to know about. Kidding. So, I'm just doing this just to create a little tutorial. Stuff I do. Like, I would do maybe a little bit of shading. Kind of like this mouth, except it's, like, even cheaper because it's, like, marker and stuff like that. But again, like, with that kind of inspiration can come from anywhere, you know. Like, one of the things I noticed with artists is, like, there's this tradition, you know, like, artists inspire other, like main artists, but it's also good to, you know, experiment yourself, too. And I think, like, that's the thing that I learned, because if you copy other people, that's what it's going to look like. I think, you know, just the balance between that and your own expression stuff, I think that's key when it comes to artistic expression. You know, there's a quote, I forgot who said it, but you learn the rules and then you break them. And here's the scissors that was hidden. I gotta organize this place. Anyway, yeah, like, I would add little, like, you know, the little, like, little details on the tongue and inside, little shading and things. This is a rough sketch, pretty much. But, and then I'll ink it down, maybe take an eraser or something, if I was, like, doing this for real. But, you know, just jamming. You know, and like I said, sometimes I do something super last minute and make, like, cut-out eyes. Like, if you look at the early stuff that I was doing, I would just, like, do, like, you know, paper. Sometimes, like, I think it was the Do Stupid Things for Cash thing. You know, I was doing the Depressed Emo Gothics, and I think the guitar player, Craig, or something like that. It's been a while. And I did the eyes, like, digitally with, I think, the paint program or whatever before I was using, like, Photoshop and stuff. And just print it out. And then, you know, I would just draw it. And of course, it looks cheap, but, again, sometimes you just do that, get the joke across. So, how rude of me. I'm moving to something else. Sorry about that. So, you know, next thing I would do is, you know, instead of like the finger holes, I would just like, you know, just make sure that it's like tight and stuff. And if you get, again, if you look at like the real early stuff, my characters always look somewhat flat. But again, you know, like how I do it, again, is you trace down the other halves and make sure, you know, there's room for your hands and stuff. But, you know, as I kind of built more and stuff, that would just be the mouth plate, and just to make sure your hands are in there. Because if it isn't, your hand's all over the place and the puppet looks kind of crappy. Like, I did a parody of Jack Black years ago. And a friend of mine told me he kind of looks like, you know, one of those tinky things you find, like, in Hawaii and the, like, islands and stuff. And I didn't have, like, the mouth plate, you know, set, so, you know, sometimes the mouth movements weren't that great. But anyway, you know, I would like, it's kind of like arts and craft class at school. I'm just doing this for example. Like, I would take that and, you know, glue around the edge and stuff like that. You don't want to glue in the middle because that's where your fingers are going. If you do that, you don't got much of a puppet to work with unless, you know, you're working with rod or a different way of going about doing it. And then, you know, I would do the same, you know, same kind of deal, you know, make two of them, and you do that, and then you have pretty much a mouth plate. And again, like, that's kind of like the sort of thing with the flap characters, and then you kind of build on top. I'm not, you know, I draw better than I do puppet building, but the more you do it, practice makes perfect. That's the same with drawings. Like, I can compare my puppet building from 10 years ago, I can compare my drawing from 10 years ago, stuff like that. So I would experiment, you know, sometimes with legs and stuff. Like, this looks pretty cool, and I did this on a more recent sketch. But this is, again, the folly of doing things spontaneous. You think it's going to go around my arm, and it isn't. So the character's going to look all scrunched up. You know, you live and learn. So, yeah, these are like blank heads. A couple of them right here. And if you watch like the 2015 episodes, you probably might spot these. And this is the experimental one. You know, little goatee. This is like a garbage bag material. And you know, one of the coolest things I did when it comes to recycling, I would say, is I did the Grim Reaper puppet, and for like the cloak, that's a garbage bag, but it works really well, you know, on camera. You wouldn't notice these things, you know, on film, which is really, really neat. And that's like, you know, really into the whole thing of puppetry and stuff. Like, this is a blank head. I have an eye right here that fell off one of the other stock puppets. But, you know, say if I don't want to ruin the paint and stuff, like, it would work better if it was, like, fabricated. I just use a glue gun. I would do it very lightly, but just enough so it would stay properly. When I started, I used the glue gun like crazy, so a lot of the puppets, there would be just tons of glue gun like marks and everything. This has it a lot because it's been used a lot, so maybe like a fabricated skin would work. Sometimes I just paint around it. So, like, for example, like this, you know, wait for that to dry, and then depending on the sketch I'm working on and what kind of character I need, and then when I'm done, you know, just take it off, and, oh, yep, there you go, a little bit right there. So, I make, like, tons of stock characters, and then sometimes there's characters that, tend to develop. Like, for example, this was originally Fred Phelps, and yeah, I have an arco-capitalist button on here, and, you know, because that's like the big thing when it comes to anarchism. You know, anarchists don't consider anarcho-caps to be truly anarchists. So I used that recently. This puppet's pretty old, I would say. Going on 4 years now. And again, folly, the puppet's kind of small, so sometimes I'm just operating with my fingers. This was originally Fred Phelps. I used to take tons and tons of shots at Westboro Baptist Church. But, it's kind of like when Phelps is gone and then Steve Drain takes over, whoever, whatever. It's the same thing. It's hierarchical hate. Unnecessary. And this is, like, again, another mistake, but it is pretty cool, where I have the rod glued in on the side. And even though it kind of looks wobbly, I can do some cool things. Like, I can, if I'm, like, really careful, that can look like, cheap snapping or something like that. I can have characters like waiting, look at the watch, or something cool like that, with the tissue from anywhere, and it's kind of a crappy suit. So, if you've been watching the episodes of the Erica Crooks show, this is like basically, it started out as like Phelps, and the puppet was too small, so I rebuilt the head, and then this was like supposed to represent all the members of Westboro except for Steve Drain, because they're pretty much all the same. The attitude's all the same, and they're scared people who don't think for themselves. And then I did a sketch where revealing that maybe Westboro Baptist Church is like an evil infotainment company, because they're always in the news and stuff, even though the culture should truly ignore it. In a way, it's kind of good, but at the same time, media is manipulated a lot. So, this character ended up being an entrepreneur of evil and stuff, calling up Ryan McPherson of bum fights and all this stuff, and just doing all these crazy things. They had, at one point, he had this character homeless and stuff. It's just, whatever. It just ended up being a character, and then, like, siding with the executives and all of that. And my mom just gave this to me. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do with it. It's kind of like fur fabric. Kind of reminds me of like Muppet Monsters in a way. It's pretty neat. Speaking of Steve Drain, this used to be Steve Drain of Westboro Baptist Church, and then got sick of it. And I had a Halloween show where I had him say the F slur. Basically just the whole idea where it's like, oh, I didn't get censored that time, that means I'm going to get away with it, and his head blows up. So, of course, as the puppet surgeon, I glued it and just made him to this kind of zombified character. I know, it's kind of funny. And, how do I know that? How do I know you were laughing? Anyway, so, and then being a stock character, and the heads are severed. So, if I had a character's head blow up, I could still have my hand in the body, so it's separate. Just for the cartoon violence and stuff. So I have Labrick here. And performing Labrick for over 10 years now. And I actually have a couple of them now. This one, the original one, I probably mentioned, my father threw out all my stuff and he was an abusive monster. So, of course, I had to rebuild the characters. So this one's from 2013. And puppets do wear out. That's the bad part. Like, post the animation where, more saving on money, except the pros with puppets is you can be spontaneous, so there's all this wear and stuff, and all fuzzy and this, But still, you use Labrick, and if Labrick got really, really bad, I would either, just fix up, patch up, or just rebuild the puppet and use the old one for scrap if it got that bad. I don't know if people know this about Dr. Labrick, but Dr. Labrick's physically disabled because the story, and I don't think it was really revealed on the shows or anything, but my backstory with Labrick is that he put his hand in a machine he wasn't supposed to, and it chopped his hand clear off. Not related, but so we replaced it with a bobby pin. God knows why. And he's always a doctor of malpractice. So you could be a doctor of any profession, and it doesn't matter that, he's not getting paid. He just, loves pranking people, for better or worse. If it's moral or immoral, that's like Labrick's character. And this one was 2015. This is a backup Libra, slightly a little different. You know, trying to work on it, you know, evolving. And I think I mentioned like chroma key and stuff like that. So this is actually blue, you know, close hanger wire that's already painted and stuff. Kind of hard to find, but you know, I felt it was super necessary. But even like these do sort of well. And I love chroma key backgrounds and stuff. I think it was inspired by the Warpaless World of Dr. Seuss, like season 1. I don't like season 2. For anyone who remembered, who grew up in the 90s, puppets from the Jim Henson Company, and I thought that was really cool that you can do a whole show with, and it saves money on backgrounds, because, I mean, those sets can be like really, really awesome, but, you know, if you try to do something like that yourself, you're going to have to cut costs if, you know, you're not doing business or anything in this capitalist society. But if we don't, we do whatever we want. And then, of course, there's storage and stuff. You know, I built like over 100 puppets. And so, you know, puppets wear out. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes, you know, one's turned into characters, and I'm so precious. It's a good character. And so, build a whole bunch of stock characters. Sometimes you start off with stock characters. This is one I just kind of quickly built together. Kind of parroting the whole reptilian thing, New World Order. I don't know what to do with it yet, the character puppet. So, kind of like Herbie the Snitch. Herbie the Snitch was a character I built in high school, and it was a nice puppet, and yeah, got thrown away by my dad, who never left me or anything I did anyway, who cares. So, I tried to rebuild the puppet, it didn't look as good, and again, you know, working cheaply can be good, and sometimes not so much. And this is like, just like reaction Libra, just to have that cool effect, you know. I did that in the first show of the 2018 season and stuff. Body's totally, yeah, crummy, but... And I think I built a smaller one, like a miniature one, so if Libra got electrocuted or something. Or it was actually a display for an art gallery I was going to do, but since I noticed the art gallery was just like frame picture, just stuck with that. I had pictures of this. So a lot of times the puppets are missing or get thrown out by someone who doesn't care. So I would slowly rebuild the older characters. Sometimes, you know, I just work from memory, and it's an evolution thing. They look slightly different than the ones before. Like, when I started building puppets, like I was mentioning, they look kind of like this. And the arms are pretty just cut out. It's just really crappy. But, you know, and when I did rods, there's better rods, you know. Clothes hangers are pretty cool. And then, you know, I bought this from a very good friend of mine. You know, you can duct tape it and stuff. But, you know, another way that's done for industry, I guess, is if you take something like this, it's kind of like a wooden thingy, dowel rod. And then you do this, you glue it down, black duct tape, and there's your handle. And there's different ways of going about doing it. Like, I've heard of stuff like you do a flag sort of thing and you have like sort of a clip inside the hand. That works better, and I should be doing that. When I started, I was mentioning I would just wrap around the wrists as tightly as I could. And you might notice this when you see the earlier stuff. Because, you know, I cared more about doing puppets for film, and just, that was the big idea, so focus on detail later, once I get better and stuff. But, you know, this was something I just wanted to do since I was a kid, so just, like, I leave my mistakes in, even when I was, like, in high school, when I was doing my, filming class, they told me, well, we're going to have to lower your grade, and I'm like, no, I want to leave the mistakes in so I can learn from that, and I just like the idea of doing chroma key. I love the idea of just doing that, the big picture, and then the details come after. Intuitive perceiver, indeed, INFP. So it's like, I used to do this a lot. If it works, you know. I think the two big things when it comes to puppets is that you want a puppet that looks good, but you also want a puppet that works good. And for me, if I had to sacrifice the two, I would go with a puppet that works good, opposed to a puppet that just looks good. Because you can have one that looks good that doesn't work that well, and you can have one that works good and looks like this. But sometimes that cheapness has a sort of a campy sort of thing. Like, there's puppets, like, you know, if I compare this to, like, more industry-based puppets, they're a lot bigger than even, like, this would be considered small, you know? You know, not as big as, say, the Spinning Image, Les Gignos puppets, but it's like, you know, Muppets are pretty big compared to my stuff, you know? Even the more smaller Muppets are, like, bigger than this. But sometimes, you know, I like the smaller puppets because I can have floppy arms and kind of stuff that, you know, just looks funny. That would be, you have to super think about it when you're animating it, but with puppets you don't, and that's the cool thing. And, you know, funny voices, and I think I mentioned it, I did a video a while back called, How I Make My Puppet Videos. I don't know if I mentioned this, but if you're starting out, a great thing to do with lip sync is listen to your favorite songs and have your puppet lip sync to that. But also, you know, try to express what the character is doing, kind of like an acting thing, sort of a theater sort of thing, you know. And that's kind of a good thing in terms of character and acting, because it really is acting. It's not like putting a puppet on your hand and doing what I was doing. You know, there's more to it. Like, with the Muppets, if you watch it, like, the, you know, especially the Jim Henson era stuff, you totally forget they're puppets. I do that, but at the same time I do the cheap stuff, like I would have characters fly in the air. I better watch out, rod attached. And stuff like that, because I think that cheapness is funny. You know. But anyway, sometimes, you know, I'm getting a little bit better, like, characters like this. You know, better fabric, like, you know, this is like red velvet and stuff like that. And it looks more seamless. You know, I took my time a little bit better. I don't sew, and I should, because I did this with a glue gun. It's going to look kind of choppy. Sorry, use your eye for another character. Oh, I cheated on you. Anyway, so yeah, like, this was a more traditional way. I think the finger holes fell out, but I have like a little, like, kind of rim, kind of like this. Cut the two half circles and have this in the middle, and you tape it, and it works pretty cool, you know, because I can kind of do this, you know, and it's not like the flexible foam, like, say, Liebrecht's mouth is made out of. But you can still somewhat do that, and my hands are a little bit better. Should do stuff with the rods. I did have, like, a puppet. I did that with, like, pipe cleaner, but there's, like, better ways to go about doing it. And, you know, and this one has, like, I didn't bother building the other hand, kind of like with Liebrecht, but I don't want to do that with all my characters. I could, but, you know, I like to, you know, anyway. So, you probably recognize this puppet, you know, and, again, I use double stick tape, so if I wanted to change the eyes, I can, you know, add a pupil or something like that, or add glasses, kind of like a Dr. Bunsen Honeydew kind of thing, where it doesn't have, like, eyes and just glasses, you know. And you see that with, like, cartoon characters, even, like, you know, Far Side and stuff. It's amazing how many cartoonists, like, rip off Far Side, or even how many puppeteers rip off the Muppets. So, I don't know if you can see back there. Yeah, I just used that puppet in the Happy Time Murders parody. And that was just like a stock head, but I kind of threw that together. And I have, like, little bags of foam and stuff. But it's never enough foam. I tore out, I had, like, a mattress that I totally gutted because I was going to throw it away anyway. Oh, that's Mom's cat. Cat sitting. So, I just, like, took a knife and just like gutted it out, because they'll throw the mattress anyway, might as well save the foam. And it was like all, I mean, it wasn't like dirty or anything, but you know, it was old foam. But still, it's some foam, you know. Heard of like recycling centers is pretty cool. I better check that out. So currently, I have a lot of the puppets in here, and again, puppets wear out. Sometimes old characters turn into stock characters. Executive rebuilt character. Sometimes gotta fix them up. Stuff like that. Sometimes puppets can get kind of edgy. And sometimes they even lose their ears. So they're always like repaired by the time filming stuff. And then I have like foam and stuff like in the cabinets. Can't really see it in this video. I think I got a picture on the Facebook/official Erica Crooks. Stuff like that, and having a bin full of like foam and stuff. That's something I learned because I was lucky enough. There's my mom's cat. To visit the Muppet Workshop in I think it was like '98. So whenever I like saw those details, they had a laundry chute. They had a laundry chute full of foam and foam pieces, like stuff like this. Like in the Muppet Workshop would not be like thrown away, because you can use it for anything like under the eyelids and stuff, and they always saved it. And it was like, it looked like almost like an office without the cubicles, or maybe a little bit, but everyone's going to the laundry chute and picking like foam pieces like that. So I learned that and stuff. So that was super awesome that, you know, not a lot of puppet builders got to see, you know. And this was before they sold them to Disney and Puppet Heap took over and all that. But anyway, I have like, I'm sort of semi-organizing stuff. Like I have like more fuller foam and stuff in those drawers and stuff like that. Well, I have little scrap pieces here and there if I just need something for the eyelids or whatever. Maybe I want this character to have like eyelids and then have more foam. Again, it's sculpting, so be creative. And like I said, puppets get worn out. I mean, look at all this. This was built in 2013, all worn out, needs to be rebuilt. Or sometimes I just don't care and just throw it on camera. And it depends on my kind of mood. You know, if I want to do something cheap and funny, I just grab a puppet and do something. I was doing that recently, almost, and it kind of makes it look like the puppets are doing their own web videos for YouTube, because there's a lot of people who just talk about stuff that's not very useful. Like this video. I'm kidding. Go laugh at yourself. So, yeah, I mean, you can do anything. I mean, this is a small shirt that I just happened to get. See if I was going to do something with it, but I guess the best, you know, best clothing you can get is kids' clothing for puppets, because more like, I think, toddler clothing and stuff like that. Because it works well with the puppets and it looks like super, you know, it looks super professional, especially those like really kind of strange, kind of formal clothing. Like, you know, why would you see like a 3-year-old wearing a suit all the time? But it works with puppets and it does exist. But it's like $30, so it's kind of crazy. But, you know, I don't know. Sort of thinking it maybe or maybe not doing like fun crowdfunding for bigger projects and stuff. It's just taxes and all that crap, but we'll see, you know. I just don't want to exploit people, that's all. So, like, this is like stuff that my mother happened to find at a yard sale. If she finds something like this, she'll give it to me. So, like, this can be like an eyelid or something. Again, it's sculpting, and you're kind of creating cartoon characters for the most part. You know, if you want to do something realistic, I would strongly suggest take a look at the Geeknos puppets. Let's Geeknos do the info. They just got canceled. Totally bummed out. Even though I don't know a thing in French. But, yeah, like, I remember I had a couple of them in some of the earlier shows. So, it's kind of like this. It kind of has a hairy monster effect, you know, from the early Sesames, you know, where the body's too small for two puppeteers. So, I think that's, maybe why they developed things like what you call the sack body characters. Like Cookie Monster is like way more, flat body, no foam or anything, but can stretch out. Same with like Swedish Chef, except it's real hands. But yeah, like I mentioned, like stock characters, stuff like that. And so I always have stuff prepared for like last minute stuff, like blank heads and stuff. Sometimes they're all over the place. If I'm going to do something topical, and then sometimes if I want to be all detailed. But I'm also watching the budget, and there's stuff all the time, like the Muppets and Spitting Image, and even dinosaurs. They would recycle their puppets all the time, and it would be the same puppet, but it would be different characters. So sort of inspired by that, and usually sometimes the more simple the head, you totally forget that was the same puppet you used for that and stuff. And but you can tell it's the same person doing the voices, because I'm the one who's doing the voices currently. So yeah, that's a little insight on the Erica Crooks Show puppet workshop thing. And there we go. So this is Erica. Check out videos and stuff, ericacrooks.com, official ericacrooks.com. Thank you very much for watching. And good luck with your artistic ventures and projects and so forth.